Hello and welcome to the Everything Electric podcast. This week's guest, really interesting man. I've known him for quite a few years. He used to work for ULEZ. That's when I think I first met him, the Office of Zero Emission Vehicles, which was a British government run arm of government to encourage and develop the uptake of electric vehicles of all types. That was many years ago. That was not recently. He's since worked for TfL, Transport for London, where he introduced now over 2,000 electric buses, the introduction of electric taxi cabs, of which there are now, I don't even know, probably tens of thousands in London. The encouragement of fleets to use electric delivery vans and trucks in central London. What's happened in central London is this remarkable turnaround in air quality. Really is noticeable. London used to be, one of the dirtiest cities in Europe. It's a big city. Millions of people live in London, and hundreds of thousands of diesel trucks, vans, buses were on the roads every day in London, and it could really stink. It was really bad. That has just been transformative, how much that's changed. And this guest was very much at the very epicenter of all those decisions. He's also he's just an extraordinary man, and his knowledge of how you can facilitate charging in cities, how people who don't have anywhere to charge out, they can't park a car off the street at their homes. All those things are very much at the forefront of our discussion. So I think it's a really fascinating topic. Before we dive into that, can I just say that we've been now going over 15 years. We're hugely grateful to the response that we've had for this show over the years. Anyway, that's enough. Please welcome to the Everything Electric podcast, Michael Hurwitz. Our 3 free YouTube channels on EVs and clean tech are funded by our fun-packed test drive-tastic events in Farnborough, London, the Southwest, the North, Melbourne and Sydney, and next up we're in Canada for Everything Electric Vancouver. And new for UK viewers, you can now buy a battery EV and much more at everythingelectric.store. So, Michael, thank you so much for finding time to do this. I think we should be honest about it. We've recorded this podcast once before with the aid of, I'm not going to mention their name, a world-leading audio-visual electronics brand. And we recorded something in their wonderful studios, and it was all marvelous, and none of it worked. They had one job, and they let us down. And so that was a few weeks ago.
But it's a pleasure to talk to you again, though.
Well, that's very kind of you, and vice versa. So I really do appreciate it, though, because that was an extra frustration. But can you kick us off then with a quick resume of what you've done and how you've your career? I just don't like using the word career because I've never had one. I don't know what they are, but you have. So can you tell us about your career?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for having me here. So, look, I guess the headline is that for nearly 20 years now, I've been lucky enough to have led some of the UK's biggest shifts to green and smart transport. And that's either through high impact programmes in government, so nationally, or here in London, but also in the private sector, so startups and bigger commercial organisations. So the steps on the journey, I'd started in the private sector, but then I moved into national government. And I guess it was like as the ex-private sector guy. And I became the most senior government official on clean energy and future tech in transport. So I wrote the UK's first low-carbon transport strategy. I set up and led the UK's programme on electric vehicles. I did the same on driverless cars. My remit was also biofuels, giving out R&D funding, and then regulating the automotive industry, including at some interesting times like Dieselgate.
Yes.
Then I went to Transport for London, so innovation director there. So I led on.
Can I just explain? So previously, you were working in the national government as a civil servant. That was your role.
That's right.
I mean, I just for people overseas might wonder if you were an elected representative, but you worked for the government, and then TfL is Transport for London, which is the local London Transport Authority.
Exactly right. Integrated Transport.
I've got that right.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And so, yeah, I mean, in a way, same kind of stuff, but at a sort of mega city rather than national level. So micromobility, so e-bikes and e-scooters, planning the capital's EV infrastructure rollout,
Right.
electrifying the buses. We ran a bunch of really cool innovation projects. But I was also involved in the crisis management mechanisms at Transport for London. So I was something called a gold commander for major incidents, and that, particularly during COVID, that kept me really busy.
Yeah.
We set up this big temporary field hospital in the Excel exhibition centre called the Nightingale Hospital, which was an interesting time. So at this point, though, at the end of my time at TfL, I was itching to get back in the private sector because I'd done this sort of market creation side of it. I'm quite mission driven about this agenda, and I genuinely believe to shift the dial, you do need creative businesses to make things happen on the ground. So I rolled the dice. I had my startup adventure with the EV Challenger Arrival, which is quite a wild ride. Maybe we can talk about it. But since 2022, I've been a partner at PA Consulting, and I lead part of their business called Clean and Smart Mobility. So that is advising global investors, ambitious fleets, some of the biggest government programs, charge point operators, technology, energy, and startups on how do you make this shift to clean and smart mobility actually happen. So it's sort of moved from vision into, okay, how can we get this operationally, commercially working? So that's me so far.
But I mean, that's what is fascinating about that is in that period. So for people who don't live in the UK or haven't been to London, I think it would be fair to say that 20 years ago, London wasn't like super toxic city. It wasn't like horrendous because we'd stopped burning coal in the city many years before that. But, it was certainly, it was very noticeable air pollution from road transport. You could smell it. And if you didn't live in London and you arrived at like Euston Station, Paddington Station, you go, bloody hell. It was noticeable, and it was pretty toxic. And I've got to say now, and I've just been in London over the last weekend, it's really transformational. I mean, it really is a noticeable difference. So you've had I know it's not just you, but there's a definite impact it's had. The air, well, I think it's measurable, isn't it? The air is definitely cleaner in London now.
No, I mean, it is. And by the way, I've heard other people say that as well. Friend of my brother-in-law, he's living in South America, and he came back after like 18 years. And I said, what's changed? Because there's so many new developments. Yeah. And it was like, it's quiet. Yeah. And it's clean, and like everything, and he felt like everything's gone electric. I mean, I guess we'll come on to talk about the Ultra Low Emission Zone, right? Maybe that's a good thing to start with, but it's quite a controversial policy. And it started in 2019. I didn't lead it. There were some great colleagues at TfL that did that, but it happened when I was there. Headline is that you need a car. If it's a petrol gasoline car, it has to be from 2006 onwards. If it's a diesel, it needs to be from 2015 onwards. So it gets, reasonably high level of emission standards. And last year they did the monitoring report on it, and it's really made a difference. So cumulatively over that 5-year period, NOx, so oxides of nitrogen, were 24% lower, particulates, I think 29% lower. And in year, depending on where you were in London, it was, I think, 33 to 39% lower NOx than it was. So you probably can smell the particulates going down. But overall, it's better. And there's a good equity angle on that actually as well, because often it's the most deprived areas that have the worst impacts. So that's part of the argument. But it is controversial. And I've been out of TfL for a while now, and you sort of see the amazing thing about TfL and the mayor and the mayors is that they're happy to be brave and they're happy to be strong. These are they can be quite polarizing, these policies, but they've stuck with them and they've done it. And it's not just on emissions, right? Talking about transport, they've reallocated a lot of road space to cycling and walking. And here's a fact for you. The Tube London Underground network is 402 kilometres long. Right. That's all the different lines. Yeah, all the different lines. Last year, end of last year, 2024, the length of cycle lanes overtook that. Wow. Amazing. Which is amazing. And there's 500 million cycling trips now a year in London, which is, it's not like Northern Europe certain cities
No.
there, but it's growing.
But it's transformed though from when I used to live in London and cycled everywhere. There was
totally. But it is. I would say that it's very, very human centered the way TfL does its strategies. Right. But if I was to offer one thing, there's two things. It's very good at talking about strategies for people, but in a city you have to move a lot of stuff. It's freight servicing, which I don't think always gets the priority, and it's really good at the the sticks side of it. You need to be brave. You need to do the sticks. Sometimes I kind of wish there might be a little bit better on the carrot. Yeah. Because I do a lot of work now with fleets, and if you look at like last mile deliveries in London, huge growth in that. It's not just deliveries, responsible for the vans. There's like servicing, like plumbers and electricians and stuff. But you if you help these companies work out their asset strategy, when are they going to shift from diesel to electric? One of the key drivers, it's a completely unemotional decision. It's commercial and finance and operation. That's it. And they look at the total cost of ownership of moving from one type to another. And normally, because electricity is cheaper, if you do more miles, you're spending less money on diesel. It's a great idea. But in a place like London, it presents a really interesting challenge because it's so dense. The delivery van will come out of the depot and it'll drive around and do its 130 drops in a day or whatever it is. And only do like 20 miles because it's so dense. And you're actually not doing enough mileage to get necessarily all the benefit that you could in other places. And the congestion charge for ULEZ, you do get that there's a discount for electric. There was actually an exemption for electric. And TfL was meant to end that this year.
And this is for electric delivery vans, not private cars. Yeah.
Well, also for cars, it was meant to end it this year. And I mean, I'm really pleased. They are now consulting that maybe we don't turn it off altogether. But they're saying, well, maybe we keep the van discount to 50%. I'm a bit worried it's not enough because, the market hasn't produced enough vans and, very low margin businesses, highly optimized. And I think they might need a little bit more chucked at it to make the decisions right. So anyway, but look, TfL is great and it is brave and it does things that, are often the envy of the world. But it's, I would say a few more carrots, I think would be good. Would be handy. But I mean, it is that, the change is very noticeable. And I mean, I'm not sure of it, but it's certainly something that's happening in many European cities, the same kind of basic trajectory, Paris being obvious, Amsterdam is very good. I think Berlin has done a lot of that, but more recently New York, which I'm really interested because you'd think that would be the hardest place to instigate anything, but they've instigated quite a lot of legislation recently that has become very, very popular with the people who live there and very unpopular with people who drive into Manhattan. So I think they have put some restrictions on driving in Manhattan, but I don't know enough about it to comment. Yeah, well, I mean, there tends to be a thing where any major intervention that jolts people out of what they used to do, it is resisted. And but in the end, there will be government analysis. They'll talk about benefits and disbenefits. Benefits but disbenefits is like things that don't go well. But you do often find like one of the key things is in most places where it's happened where you pedestrianise areas. There's a real sense of fear before it happens for local businesses. And more often than not exclusively, but more often than not, it's just reshaped in a different way, and you have higher footfall but less vehicular traffic. And in doing Times Square in New York, that was pretty brave.
That's right. They closed the whole thing.
But the place feels so different now. And has a different quality. So because actually on when was that, Saturday afternoon, my wife and I were in London and we went to an art exhibition like proper boomers should do.
And then we just were going to see a friend, and we walked across Regent Street, which had been closed because of Pride. And it was so lovely. It was so amazing. I mean, it's sort of painfully obvious, but if you have a big wide street like that in the center of a city, there were thousands of people walking up and down. There was no traffic at all. There were no buses even. They must have rerouted the buses, because I know that's a popular bus route. And it just was transformative. And you can't help it as a pedestrian. You go, I don't care about the complexities right now and how difficult this is and how much it's making lives awkward for other people, i.e. taxi drivers, bus drivers, etc. This is really nice.
Yeah, no, but again, it's that equity point. Equity is not just about people. I mean, it is obviously about people. Not everyone can walk, right? And you know, people some need the vehicles. But actually, part of that wider equity is the emergency services and the servicing and the supply to those shops and cafes and restaurants, and and the waste and moving aggregates in and out for building, and so it's it's a tough balance, and I think you if you want to have a people-centered city that people want to come and live in, you want to make it human-centered, but you've also got to find a way of dealing with all the fitting all that other stuff in there as well. Yeah. So it's a tough gig being an urban planner.
Yeah. Oh, it's got to be. It's got to be horrendous. I mean, what were the sort of major resistances when ULEZ? ULEZ stands for Ultra Low Emission Zone. Just remembering to explain what those mean. But what were the main pushbacks when that was first introduced? Was there any kind of trade group? Was it taxi drivers? Was it delivery people? Was it angry bankers who wanted to drive their Range Rovers?
Well, do you know something? Everyone has an opinion and everyone has a view of how it could be done. I think some of the hardest bits were it was the equity side of it. You know, so if you have a geographical based system, you have to draw a boundary somewhere. Yeah. And it's the people who are just on one side, just in or just out. Yeah. You know, hold on a minute, I can't do what I used to do now without paying. But for example, through that consultation, there's for the congestion charge, for example, resident discount is one of the things. They get a big discount if you're in the area. I would say that's probably the biggest thing, is that the people that just fall the wrong side of a line,
right on the edge of it.
Yeah, exactly. And particularly if you're in if you've got less money to play with, forcing you to change a car is a big expense. Even if the majority of cars are secondhand, it's still hard to do. So I would say that's probably the big one.
So I mean, are there plans to extend it though? So at the moment, it would be what I would describe as the central part of London is the ULEZ zone, and then is the congestion zone bigger than that? I'm absolutely not.
No. So the congestion charge is the central, right. That's
very central. That's just
that's an extra £15. They're talking about increasing the amount per day. So that's really central London, and then the wider one is the ultra low emission zone. It's not quite, but it's quite close to the M25 is a motorway that goes all the way around London. It doesn't go all the way out to it, but it's most of that area of Greater London.
Right. So that's the bigger area. Yes.
That's the bigger area. Yeah. Look, as far as I'm aware, not at the moment. I'm not in the gang anymore.
You're not in that. Yes, you're not in the room where they.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But all I do know is that it's a big decision and a brave decision to expand it, and there will be a very careful political judgment about when the conditions are right to do anything more ambitious. At the moment, they're consulting on what happens to the exemptions and the future charges. So that's probably enough political debate that they're for the next few months.
But I mean, in some ways, I suppose it could also be, this is over the next 10 years. The improvements that I certainly witnessed in terms of battery technology, in particular, when I was in China, the cost and the energy density of the next generation of batteries could mean that a delivery van that could replace a diesel is actually cheaper to buy anyway, and it's much cheaper to run, and it will last longer. You know, those economic imperatives might start to make people go, we'll have electric anyway, because it's better, rather than we've been forced to.
I mean, I think, it's going to get there. I mean, we've spoken about this kind of stuff before, you know, but like, you know, the battery, it's already sort of tracking 90% lower battery cost than it was.
Extraordinary.
I mean, like we've been speaking about London, but like when I was in national government, I remember in the early days, you know, this is like the beginning of the low carbon transport program. I remember having a study done about, okay, where could batteries be applied? Because it looked that, you know, if you're looking at a curve that somebody says is going to go down and down and down, you're not quite sure.
No, absolutely not.
But we did this study, and it must have been published, would have been published by Ricardo, they're the engineering consultants. And broadly speaking, the exam question was, okay, cars, I can see, vans, I can see. For a heavy goods vehicle, how heavy would the battery need to be, and how much would it cost to have a truck, a long distance truck, have the same range? You know, and in Europe, it's about 40 tons, these vehicles. The answer was 40 tons of battery.
So you have to double the weight of the truck.
You know, clearly ridiculous. But, you know, since then, energy density almost doubled. You know, battery costs down more than 90%.
Yeah, because I mean, that's the other thing back then. The cost of that battery, if you did buy a 40-ton battery, would be mind-boggling. It would be in the millions.
Absolutely. But also the reliability. You know, there's been this kind of tradition, like this growth curve. Every year, it's got better and better and better. Like the amount of degradation reduces. But in the last couple of years, you know, there's you know, CATL have been talking about this sort of no degradation battery on LFP. Those batteries, there's various techniques now that they're starting to apply to, if not completely remove, but hugely mitigate battery degradation. So these things are going to last a lot longer than anyone ever thought.
90 years. That's what they're talking about, a useful life of 90 years, which is...
So look, if all things remain equal, who knows what's going to happen globally with tariffs and stuff. If the flow of batteries can be maintained and can be produced maybe more locally at good prices, then for sure. I think the point that you were talking about, it will just become better for a lot of people. I mean, it's not better for everyone yet. It really isn't. You know, and but it's about money. I mean,
the way you explained that, you know, because if you don't work in that industry, you don't know about how deliveries work. You know, you're just in your house and a van pulls up and they give you a parcel, you know, but the actual logistics involved in that and how the short distances they travel, you know, initially you might think, well, that's fine because electric vehicles can all do that. But that isn't the point, because you're not getting the advantages of an electric vehicle when you're driving 15, 20 miles, stop, start. I mean, there are a lot of advantages, I think, but is it that the actual fuel use of a diesel is much lower when you're doing that and you're not thrashing up and down a motorway? I mean, I'm guessing that might be
that's one of the key things. That's one of the key things. I mean, look, there's various things. How much does servicing, maintenance and repair, you know, SMR, how much does that cost? You know, there's a lot less to go wrong on an electric van, which is a potential benefit. At the moment, maybe because of the maturity of the insurance industry, or you know, the progress of the like maintenance industry is not necessarily used to this technology. So when things do go wrong when they do go wrong with electric, they think it's big, you know, and I think, oh gosh, you know, I don't know what to do with that battery. Let's write the whole vehicle off, you know. So there's actually a higher percentage of EVs currently being written off after an incident than ICE, whether or not that's necessary. May or may not always be the case. So you're finding that there's a whole series of parameters to it, but the big thing is, you know, fuel costs is a massive saving. Although again, in the UK, electricity is higher than in some of the markets.
Expensive. But then, so now you're working in a consulting role, and that is, so are you presumably then talking to different companies about? And we're talking, you know, the fleets that you're talking about. This is mainly like delivery fleet. Is that the area that you're dealing with? That some of it. So that's some of it. You know, it's all sizes.
and then it's
Right.
all the way along the value chain. So it's some of the big like leasing entities, like who finance all the vehicles on the road, like really big deal for them about how it's a really big deal for them about how you change your whole ecosystem if everything's powered differently. Do they engage in the right way? So then the charge point operators, a lot of investors, who do you pick? Who's going to win?
Yeah.
And this is an emerging market, right? So a lot of bets were made a few years ago.
Yeah.
So there's the work with, unfortunately, some of the companies are going to win, some of them are not going to win. And so it's a question of like, for the companies themselves, how do you get them fit enough to be the ones to survive? For the investors, how do you pick the winners? How do you tweak the strategy so it's more resilient? So it's all along the value chain from financing the vehicles to running the vehicles to dealing with the customer relationships to managing the energy for them, for the future tech that enables the whole system, and then other stuff like driverless as well. But so it's all along the future mobility value chain at the moment.
Right.
But it's very different.
London,
go on.
Yeah, well, I was only going to say that London is a good example of, I don't know what the percentages are. I know the national percentages, it's about 60-40. So 60% of UK households, you can park a vehicle off the street and 40% you can't. That's a government figure I remember from a while ago. So that may have changed, I don't know. But in London, it's got to be 85% you park your vehicle on the street. I mean, it's very few people who park their
it more or
car
less
off the
flipped.
street.
So, it was the RAC Foundation did a study. I think they said something like 30% have access to off street in London, but it's 70% don't, and it's and that's a real issue. The key, one of the key squeezing points in London is land accessibility to land. Interestingly, things take time. Gosh, credit to the team that ran it now, Alex and the team there. But we did some analysis a while ago to say like what's needed on the EV infrastructure. And if you look at where is available land, like where is Greater London Authority and TfL, where do they own land? Where is it in a good place that might be attractive for charging? Where does the grid have power? If you layer up these things, and Transport for London is actually a really big landlord, and they've done a deal with Fastned, to build. Well, it's up to 25 rapid charging hubs at places on the network, because exactly the reason you're saying is that for a lot of people, if you're living in a flat or if you're living in like London terraced housing, you're not going to have your driveway, and so there needs to be another solution. So the real premium in London is land, but there's a whole range of things, and we're into governments, like national government stuff now. There's a real issue about how electricity costs could be brought down for public infrastructure. Yeah.
It is something. I spoke to someone over the weekend that they paid, an absurd amount at a rapid charger. And in this particular instance, I'm not going to mention any names of any companies, but in this particular instance, because I've got in a lot of trouble saying the wrong thing about charging companies. But on one side of this particular motorway services, there's a row of chargers that are about 78 pence a kilowatt hour. And on the other side, they're 39. And people don't know that. So you go to the one that you've used before, which is more expensive. And then you wind up again. Well, you could have just moved the car over the road and paid half, getting on for half of what you paid. And that, I think, there was one charge. I'm thinking with Fastned in London. I don't know if they'll do it. But we went to a supermarket in France recently where they had a sign up, just like at a petrol station. And it said, I think it was 48 cents per kilowatt hour, like in a big lit up sign. And there was hundreds of chargers there. And I thought, well, that's quite useful, because then you can see another one down there at 36. You go there. Like you do with petrol.
That industry, they talk about planning to deploy like 6 billion of investment in it in the coming years. Huge investment, yeah. But there are sort of three. Well, there's two structural things, and maybe another thing that's an issue. So one of them is that in the UK, domestic electricity is charged at 5% VAT.
Yeah.
but commercial is 20%, right?
Yeah.
And interesting question. Shouldn't if I don't have access to that because I live in a block of flats because I can't afford a house, or I choose not to have a house, is that fair, right? So that's number one.
Yeah.
There's another thing about the electricity market standing charges. So the way it works in the UK is that you get billed for the standing charge, which is like your connection fee to the grid.
Yes, sort of. Yeah.
According to what you will eventually use, right? So if you're building a rapid charging hub, and you're building ahead of demand, and your demand's going to build up over the next 5 years, the way it works at the moment is you're charged for what it's going to be straight away. So
right.
It would, and that's pretty tough if these companies are trying to grow businesses. And the final thing is, I've always wondered, there's this thing in the UK called the Renewable Transport Fuels Obligation, or the RTFO, which is it. So for liquid fuels, a percentage of that every year has to be from renewable sources. Let's say biodiesel from waste, and it's actually this year the target is about, I think it's 14% of what you get on a forecourt is actually biodiesel, and there's another target for like fuels from waste for another 1% or 1.5%. And in Germany, e-fuels count. They've had this thing, so essentially, if I'm an oil producer, you trade in these credits, so they have a value. So if I can't produce enough sustainable fuel, I can go and buy credits from someone who takes, used vegetable or used cooking oil and turns it into diesel. And in Germany, they've included EV charging as a sustainable fuel, which to me kind of makes sense. Right. So I think there are things that there's costs in the UK, I think, need being reviewed, but there's also things you could do to give EV charging a bigger value in the UK if you compare to what's going on elsewhere in the world.
Yeah. And I mean, also that, I mean, it's not off topic because it does directly affect it, but the discussion that's going on at the moment about the wholesale price of electricity being defined by the cost of gas. I mean, particularly recently, we did a 69%. We had a day where it was 69% of all our electricity was from renewables, but the cost didn't go down to what it should do. It's still because there was a tiny bit that was being produced by gas, and that's what defined the cost. And then you go, how did that happen? What incredibly successful lobbying was done to create that ruling, or how did that come about? I mean, I'm not necessarily asking you to explain because I certainly don't know, but it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look,
it does seem weird now.
It's changing. I think the system was designed when it really was gas kept everything going, right? And if you needed to turn something up and down, it was going to be gas. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think watch this space. I don't know what's happening. Right. I mean, the UK government announced a couple of weeks ago support for some energy intensive industries. The big thing is exactly what you say. Can you decouple the gas price from the renewables price and how's that set? I think the Secretary of State was on the podcast with Imogen, right? And he was saying they wanted to flip it by 2030, so it's right, far less reliant on gas. But they're going to have to change something, whether it's regional pricing, whether they completely decouple renewable prices from gas. I don't know, but I think we're all waiting to see. Yes. But I agree with you. But it happened. That's the biggest thing. To be honest, up at national policy level, I think that is the most important thing because it has a real commercial impact. Yeah, it has a real commercial impact.
But then the other big thing I think it's worth mentioning about London, the transport for London. Well, a couple of things I want to cover. The buses being electric. I know they're not all electric, but there's a lot of them that are now. I went on one the other day, 27. It was electric. I was very pleased. But I just think the public transport infrastructure, you sort of realise, especially if you spend a bit of time in other cities, it's actually not, I mean, everyone moans about it, but it's actually amazing. The public transport infrastructure, which predates all of us. I mean, it's old. The underground system is extraordinary. The new Elizabeth line, I've almost I start praying and worshipping it when I go there because it's so good. And, those things really do make a difference. But I mean, can we just quickly do the buses? Because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, buses, so there's 8,700 London buses.
Right.
2,000 are fully electric.
Wow.
And that's pretty big. I think when I joined TfL, there were 30 fully electric
Yes. Yeah.
in 2016, and now there's 2,000, which is quite cool, and 3,800 hybrids.
Right.
So that's pretty.
And are they when it's a bus? Are they a plug-in hybrid? Do they still get plugged in at the depot, or are they just mild hybrids?
I don't know. Hybrid buses. That's just I guess more mild hybrid.
Right.
There are 20 hydrogen as well.
Yeah, and they're still running. Are they still operating?
I believe so. That's quite a remarkable transformation. I think one of the key things again is how do you move it all? And one of the systems there is that there's this. It's London Transport for London sets the routes, and then private operators bid
to use them.
And it's this like giant sort of rolling procurement where they're kind of relet in time. I've always thought that changing the whole lot is quite difficult.
Yeah,
because you've got to maintain this operation going.
Yes,
and actually, shout out for all the bus depots and the bus operations companies like these. They are properly the workhorse in London, and they are they are used by a lot of people. Like compare and contrast. The tube carries, I think last year's report, 949 million trips a year.
Right.
Bus is more. Bus is 1.2 billion.
You're kidding. Wow.
Yeah. Cycling, 500 million.
Wow.
But interesting. Let me finish the public transport. I think National Rail and like the Overground is again it's about similar to the tube. Just under $1 billion. Yeah. But if you add up like personal trips in cars, so if you're a driver or a passenger or in a taxi or minicab,
right,
that is 3.4 billion a year.
Wow. So it's still way ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you need to encourage as much active travel and walk and cycle as you can, and encourage as much public transport as you can. But that gives you a couple of imperatives. For all of the public services, you've got to find a way of moving it to zero emission as quickly as you can for that.
Yes.
Buses and for taxis. And there is also this sort of recognition, which is sometimes tough for, I guess, orthodox urban planning, is you've got to do something with the car. There's going to be, even if you get rid of 1 billion trips, there's still going to be 2.5 billion in cars. And that's a lot. So you've got to, you've got to try and do it all, which is, that's the impossible challenge. But it's amazing progress. I mean, I do remember my daughter, who's now working, she's got a job, very proud, started last week. And she, I remember, as a little kid once, we were standing by a bus stop and there was that like puff of soot, and she turned around and it was probably like a slapstick film where she's covered in soot. Yeah. And that was 20 years ago, 22 years ago. Yeah. So the transformation is quite amazing, but miles behind China in many cities.
Yes. Well, I mean, I don't know about all. I mean, certainly miles behind Shanghai. It's the only place I've been. I don't know about all the other cities, but I mean, it's still. But I mean, to be fair, miles ahead of New Delhi, which has recently had some truly horrific, and Mumbai has been really bad recently, isn't it? So
what was it? World Health Organization? Is it 7 million deaths a year from poor air quality?
Yeah,
it's just like incredible. Pretty shocking. Professor Chris Whitty, who's the chief medical officer, he did a report on air quality in the UK. This is a bit more, oh dear, I'm going to get morbid. So it was the end of 2022. He did this study about air quality, and there was a bit in it. I don't know why I'm focusing on this, but it was going through the causes of morbidity in the UK. So that the top killer in the UK is like dementia at 66,000, and then it's like heart disease 58,000, and like strokes 30,000. And air quality, it's a diffuse impact. So but it encourages morbidity. And he put the annual figure in the UK as, I think it was between 28 and 36,000 deaths in the UK a year.
Right.
It's pretty shocking, that, really.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So
I mean, I think the other thing that I realised as I've got older is you've got to die of something, which is again slightly morbid thing. There's something's going to get you in the end. But yeah, no, I mean, it's so obvious that. Well, I mean, there was the the tragic case, which I think we mentioned when we've spoken before, of and I can't remember her whole name, Kissy Deborah, the little girl who died of sort of asthmatic things, and she's the first human being to be, or in the UK, to have cause of death on her death certificate, air pollution, which was really heartbreaking.
For some of it, there is no safe level. It's just better not to breathe it in. Doesn't matter how small it gets. No, it's better to breathe clean air. That's what I mean.
Yes. I think that's a general. I do remember talking to a postgrad student at, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you, at Westminster University, which is on the Euston Road, as I call it, Euston Road, near Madame Tussauds, sort of up that area.
Yeah.
Very busy through route. And they have an air monitoring box. It's still there with all the little sensors up in the air. And one postgrad student took one of the monitors and put it down at sort of knee level. And up at the top, it was reading. It was not good, but it was sort of, tolerable. When they put it down at knee level, he called it a thick, carcinogenic soup. Oh. And of course, it was only a few months earlier, I'd pushed my son along that road in a pushchair.
Oh, gosh.
So his mouth and his breathing was at like 2 feet above the ground, which was lethal. Absolutely.
Robert, we got to turn this positive. This is dark.
Yes, but that was. My son is now 32, so he survived, and he's also lived for 30 years, and it was 30 years. Would have been like 30 years ago.
Wow.
So it has, it has changed. What are the next biggest challenges? I think we've covered quite a few of them, but is there any kind of outstanding?
It's like talk it nationally, right? Like maybe out of a London context. So, there's always going to be government policy, So look, national government, like, I don't know. We could talk about the past and we can talk about present, right? So this agenda, where did it start? It started back in 2007, 2008. When the UK government was bringing in the Climate Change Act, which was this right. sort of first sort of legal structure that committed the economy to decarbon, to lower carbon. Yeah. Some of the things that drove it then are the same as now. So, one of the drivers behind it then was reduced carbon emissions and improved air quality. Yep. Right. And there was also this sort of energy system benefit. So as the UK moves towards more renewable energy, more energy independence, particularly relying on wind, then there is this point that you're going to need a way of managing the intermittency of renewables. So ability to take more energy when there's a surplus, and then either charge or not charge, or even provide electricity back when it's not blowing at all. So there was this sort of systemic benefit. But I think the other big benefit was like jobs and economy. Right. So back in then, this is the late noughties, the more advanced automotive OEMs were deciding on where to build their first EV factory. So Andy Palmer, friend of the pod, right? He was the CEO of Nissan, and I guess I was on the other side of the government table to him. Right. Trying to get that built in Sunderland. And by the way, it's an amazing thing. I remember going there a few years later. You see the car factory working in Sunderland next to the battery plant, making the batteries there. I remember we put on hard hats and went into Gateshead College, who are building like a low carbon engineering college. It's this holistic thing, and it's jobs and economic benefit. And a lot of that is still the same now. And I think you say, well, what needs to come next is that you need to find ways of getting businesses to adopt this because it makes commercial and operational sense, not just because you're being told to by policy. And there's one thing we've spoken about this before, but there's this question of how do you get the CFO interested, of a big business, right? And that's the chief financial officer. Chief financial officer. How do you get how do you get the people who are responsible, the money people interested? Because you'll get a sustainability officer interested. Great, flying the flag. But you've won the battle if you've won the CFO. Yeah. And there's a sort of a strategy I have used sometimes. Like if you talk about really big fleets. So let's take the example in the UK. The biggest in the UK in terms of putting vehicles on the road, either leasing them directly or financing them, is Lloyds Banking Group. Lloyds Bank.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. I was totally baffled by
So
that.
either directly
Wow.
or finance, they lease on the road in the UK, finance on the road, 1.1 million vehicles.
Wow.
This is a lot, right? There's 42
Yeah.
million vehicles on the road in the UK altogether, and then you right. If you were to, and this is hypothetical, but if they were all to go electric, I play this game and say, God, how much energy, how much electricity is that if they were to all get
phenomenal?
And so it's basically every year that would consume, like with average mileage and stuff, that would consume 2.4 terawatt hours of electricity. So 2,464 gigawatt hours of electricity, which, and what is that? Well, that's the same as the whole of the city of Manchester. Or the whole of the city of Glasgow. And that is a lot of energy. Okay, so that gets them to say, well, that's interesting. Maybe do we need an energy conversation? Why? So, if you were to buy that electricity, so for 1 year, current prices, that is about £175 million of electricity.
Okay.
And then it's like, oh, hold on a minute, that's a lot of value. So hold on, if there's going to be revenue and money flowing around the system, there's a growth in paying for electrons, then it's an interesting question of, hold on, can we finance something back off it? Is that a predictable set of revenue?
Right.
Could we borrow against that kind of revenue? What does it mean for customers? Am I going to get that benefit? Or does it go just directly to my customers? And once you sort of start to talk about like the scale of it, in the UK, it's quite well established now is that, the NESO, which is what National Grid has become, the National Energy Systems Operator. Yeah. They say, actually, do you know what? We're recording this on the 7th of July. I'm about to give you some figures which are about to be out of date because on the 14th of July, they're updating them. And I think this is going out the week after. All right. Forgive me. I'm going to put this out of date, right? But basically what they say, the UK grid is, the installed capacity is about, I think it's 116 gigawatts now. Right. Only ever uses 60 at any one time, peak.
So that's the generating capacity is about 116.
Correct. They only hit about 60. That's, when everyone's got their kettles plugged in and cooking dinner, it gets to that peak. But as you move to more renewables, you need more. And as everything electrifies, you need more. And they say, well, last year, they said that 2035, it's going to more than double to like 260 odds. By 2050, it's going to have to get closer to 400, but it moves up. But what they say is you need storage. Yeah. And to provide like demand response and flexibility, they think in the one of the scenarios, they say you're going to need about 38 gigawatts of storage.
Right.
And that can be hydro, it could be big batteries. Yeah.
But actually, that's less than I would have imagined, not more. Do you know what I mean? It's somehow, once you know that it's a hell of a lot. I'm not saying it's not very much, but you'd sort of think, but the response when you talk about batteries and storing, grid level electricity, people go, well, it wouldn't work because you'd need 1 billion gigawatt hours in case it was dark for 2 weeks or something.
Well, and it's
that's not how it works, is it? But,
well, it's not how it works because it's far more, battery energy storage is far more sophisticated than that now. But they actually say they cut of that 38. I think 10 might be from vehicles charging at the right time or in time, giving energy back. Yeah. And now that's hard, right? It is hard. I'm worried about the resilience of it. Like IBM say now 11% of all cyber attacks in the world are energy and utilities, right? Yeah. So, like if I don't want a hospital to be relying on whether I've got my car plugged in at home, Yeah. But once you've got scale, okay, back to Lloyds Banking Group, right? Yeah. Again, average battery size at 1.1 million vehicles is probably 60, 65 gigawatt hours?
50 and 65 kilowatts.
Yeah, and National Grid are saying you just need 10%, 10 gigawatts from vehicles. Right. So I'm not saying it's easy, and it's really hard. And how do you manage it? And but there's 42 million vehicles on the road. Yes. In the UK, and we need a relatively small selection of that to be just regularly plugging in at night. Yeah. Allowing the grid to determine when it's the sensible time to give or take energy. And this is kind of the original vision, I guess, at government level, is that rather than transport being the problem, transport is the biggest source of emissions, and road transport is the biggest of that. So it's the biggest of the biggest,
right.
And it's kind of problem child. And if you flip it to say, hold on, actually we can start contributing part of the solution. That's the thing to still get excited about. But right now we need to do more things about making it make more sense for businesses. So the biggest systemic thing, and it affects the whole economy, is getting energy prices lower. Because you maximize the benefits of people wanting to move to it. That unlocks the the ability of trading revenues and trading value across the economy and across different sectors. So what's the big thing that comes next? We've got to find a way of, number one, making the energy costs lower, and then B, it's this quite exciting time now where people are going to start coming to market with this, making the vehicles connecting with the grid. I think it will start with fleets and depots. If you've got predictable cycle, like
makes
big
more
batteries,
sense.
Buses, vans. I think it will start in earnest there, is already starting in fact. And then when the system becomes more and more sophisticated, then you probably move into vehicles more widely.
I mean, it's certainly a thing that I remember learning very early on when I started talking about electric vehicles and talking to the automotive industry and the AA and all those sort of people. I never thought about it, but as soon as you hear it, you go, yeah, of course. That my vehicle, that I've got one here, is not in use for about 95% of the time I own it.
Yeah.
Which is so stupid. And as soon as you realize, because I would have, if someone had said, how often do you use, every day. And so it's in use like 50, 60% of the time. No, it's not.
Yeah.
When you actually look at it, it's very, very little. And I probably drive above the average rather than below, and it's still, I might be 94%
and it's the second most expensive thing that you or I will ever buy after our house.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean and so when you do see examples of, we've just done an episode about Utrecht. They have got like now quite big vehicle to grid system in their city, and it's making an impact. It's actually, you can
it is,
see
and
that's
the one with the Renaults, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's really cool. No, but also Octopus and BYD, they've announced to bring that to market, which is great.
Yeah.
But it's that it is quite well established now. Like, pick your study, but it's all over the place. There is choosing when you getting the right tariff, and then being smart about when you charge.
Yeah.
And then the step further is maybe even giving electricity back to the grid when it needs it.
Yeah.
Cornwall Insight, let's talk about someone, other than Octopus. They I think they reckon about 320 pounds sterling per car per year.
Right.
Of value by, charging at the right time.
By basically trading in electricity.
Yeah. And then again, if you've got a predictable cycle with a bigger battery, like a commercial vehicle or a bus, it gets a lot higher. And there's an interesting question, who gets that value? Is it me as the customer, or is it is it Octopus as the provider?
I predict Octopus will actually rule the world, and we'll all be dressed as octopuses in about 5 years' time.
Okay, fine. Yeah, well, with the fake arms.
Yeah,
and pink hoods.
We'll all be. You have to wear a pink hood, or you get a fine, and your electricity costs more. There'll be some. No, I'm being very cruel because I think they're amazing, but it is. They seem to be expanding and growing and coming up with brilliant ideas. I've got to take my Octopus hat off to Greg Jackson. It is extraordinary what they're up to, isn't it?
Yeah, amazing.
Michael, it's been a genuine joy today. I can say that without hesitation, to talk to you and to get through that. I will let our lovely viewers know that I'm actually suffering from quite severe toothache today. I'm about to go to the dentist and have a tooth removed.
Everyone should know, by the way, that when we joined, Robert was on the phone, I think, to some medical practitioner.
Oh, no, that was to the producer of Zap Heap Challenge.
Sorry.
To Dom. Yeah.
And he was basically in clear pain. I said, are you okay? He said, no, once I start talking, I'll forget. So you're probably now... Yeah.
It got through it. It's now beginning to throb again, and I'm just getting it. Yeah, but I'm very lucky I can get to a dentist today.
And we haven't even spoken about the startup. We haven't.
Oh, God.
We didn't get to that.
Yes.
Another time. When you're not in
got to come back. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yes, you're right. I've got my notes there, and I missed that.
We missed a whole page of them, Robert, I think.
Oh my
well.
God! And I am on some pretty hefty painkillers. I don't ever take painkillers normally. So I'm in quite a good mood. But I think we've covered quite a lot, and it's been really good. And I do want to thank you for your time, because it's been really interesting. And definitely, we need you back to explain everything else that's going on.
Listen, it's an honour and a pleasure. Always great to talk. And we started talking in 15 years ago.
It's got to be, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, people thought we were mad.
Yes. Some of them might have been right, but we're less mad than we might have appeared then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Great stuff. All right. Take care. See you soon.
Great. Take care. See you soon.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed that. It was an amazing conversation. We'll definitely get Michael back on, because we barely scratched the surface of his knowledge and his understanding of what's going on, the big challenges that we're facing, and the big successes that we're having. Always worth mentioning those. That's it. See you again soon, next week. Same time, same place. Don't touch that dial. Now visit electricvehicles.expert, where you can follow everything electric and keep current with Clean Technica, The Driven, Electrek, and many more.